Okay, let's design an Essex temporary restoration. This particular patient is going to have teeth numbers 8 and 9 removed from this bridge. Numbers 10 and 9 and 10 removed from this bridge. Number 10 has an abscess. Number 9 is a ponic. And there's a small fracture at the apex. That's a diagnosis. So we're going to extract the root at 10, remove the ponic. The plan is to place 2 implants. If we can place them simultaneously, we will. And if we have to do an augmentation and come back and place the implants secondarily, that's an option as well. But we need an Essex restoration as a temporary, ideal temporary in this scenario, so you don't have any pressure on your graft. So we're going to create an Essex from this tooth numbers 9 and 10. So we start with an STL file of the arch, and I'm going to create, well, I'll tell you what, let's back up. First, let's turn on the objects browser, and I'm going to duplicate this STL file a couple of times. Let's duplicate it once, and I'm going to call this one Essex model. And we'll create a model out of this particular duplication. And then let's duplicate it again. And let's call this Essex Ponics. And we'll create the Essex Ponics out of that. So, let's go here to the Essex model, and let's create a couple of divots in the back side of these 2 teeth that will serve as a retention divot, if you will. So if I go to the select item, the select option menu item over here, and I'm going to change the size of my brush so it fits reasonably behind this tooth, and I'm literally maybe just a slight bit bigger for this central. That might be just a bit too big. And I'm just going to click one time in the middle of that tooth to create a circular selection. Then I'll go over here, maybe slightly smaller for the lateral. The size is not critically important. You just want something that's going to create a nice little retention divot, if you will. Okay, so those are going to be, we're going to now intrude these 2 sections in order to give us the retention lock for our 2 ponics. So first I want to kind of idealize or optimize this selection that I have. So I'm going to come over here. While I'm on the select tab, I'm going to go to modify, and I'm going to optimize boundary. Now that just selected a couple of extra triangles just to kind of smooth it a little bit. Now I will go to modify and smooth boundary, and I will accept that. So while you have it all selected, while it's still selected and smoothed, got the smooth border there, we just go to the edit menu, and we are going to now do what's called an extrude. Now you'll see what has just happened is it bumped our selection out a little bit, created a raised area. We're going to do a negative extrusion by just making the offset approximately minus 0.7. let's try -1. You can take it as deep as you want, whatever you think would be a good -1.5 in this particular case. Oh, what the heck, let's just go a couple of millimeters. Okay, now we're going to accept that, and you now see you have a 2 millimeter inset on the inside of each tooth. And I'm going to just put an additional little locking feature on the outside. So I'm going to do my selection again. This is almost like an aligner enhancer, if you will, but it'll just give it a little extra lock right out here on the buckle. And if I just kind of draw a little oblong oval scenario like this, now I'm going to go to modify, optimize the boundary, and modify smooth the boundary and accept that. And now I've got a nice smooth little oval. If we want to make it a little bigger, maybe we could. Let's just increase the size of our selection brush, and let's just paint right over that. And once again, optimize the boundary. And now smooth the boundary. Accept that. And that looks good. So let's go to edit and let's extrude that. And this one definitely probably 0.7 at the most. Even that looks like too much. 0.5. Okay, that'll just provide a little notch to help lock those two ponics in, and we can accept that. All right. Clear the selection. Now, you can see we've got a notch on the inside. We've got a negative notch, if you will, or an intrusion on the inside. We have a positive notch on the outside. This will create a nice little lock for our two Essex ponics. Now we want to create, actually, let me back up again. This is the Essex model that I've created. I actually want to go back to this model here, and I'm going to delete this model. Because I actually want to create my ponics from this Essix model. So at this point, I want to duplicate the Essix model, and I'll rename this one Essix Ponics. Okay. Now, for the Essex ponics, I'm going to close the Essex model off, and I'm going to open just the Essex model and show it on display. Now for the Essex model, I want to delete everything except the two teeth and then close the two teeth, and I'll show you that real quick. I'm going to go to the select tool. This time I'm going to use my line select, and I'm just going to draw a line right through that embrasure space, bring it on around, and I'm going to delete that segment there. I want to go to the inside and see how it followed up. You can see I missed a little bit, and you want to do it this way. You want to go through at an angle so that it doesn't cut part of this tooth off. And now I'll just come back and I'll do another cut here to get rid of the part that got missed. Okay. Now if I double click on this segment that is now separated from the rest of the STL file, it'll select that entire segment and I can delete it. Now I'm going to cut through again in a manner that I don't think I will cut off the backside of these teeth. So if I go through like so, and I can just circle this and delete this all in one motion if I want to. Now as I come around, that one actually did pretty well. So I'm going to angle this so that I miss the facial parts, and now I want to cut off everything beyond the tooth. All of that soft tissue needs to go, because I want nothing but teeth here. For my two ponics. Turn it around. Since I've got some of the tooth here, I'm going to hold the shift button and I can just color that to remove that portion of the selection. Okay. And then another way to select this, I could just not hold the shift button and it will select right up into here. I tend to like to use the line feature because I can just click along that line and I can get it good. But now I'm going to delete all of that, and you'll see it deleted the part that I'd selected first, and then it deleted this part. I can now come in with my little line feature and I can clip out some of this here. And when I complete it, complete the loop, it makes the selection. I can hit the delete button and it'll delete that. So these are my two ponics, but I have to close these in so that this will print. So in order to close it in, I see a little piece of STL file that's sort of hanging out there. I'm just going to go around that and select it and delete it. Okay. So now I'm going to do some bridges so that I can close this. The way I will do it is I'm going to make my selection bar just slightly smaller, about like so, and I want to select the edge of this portion of the tooth and the edge of that portion of the tooth. I can now do edit and bridge, or it's the Control B keystroke, and it will bridge that little section. I hit accept and then clear. I find if I make 3 bridges, another selection, I want to bridge it right in this embrasure space. So if I select that edge and this very edge, it will make a bridge across there. So hit Control B and I've bridged that. Now if I make another, I have to accept and clear selection. And now if I make another bridge using select right about here, and let's say right here, Control B, and I've got these 3 bridges, hit accept and clear selection. Now I'm going to use the analysis inspector feature to close this in. Analysis inspector, and I get these little blurbs that tell me the areas that I'm trying to close. Okay, the 2 on the sides I'm going to close using flat fill, which is the default. So for these two little blurbs on the side, I just go ahead and click them, and you'll see how it filled that kind of flat. And the one over here, it'll feel kind of flat. And the 2 on the bottom, if I change this to smooth fill, it almost creates like an ovate ponic. Just seems to work very nicely. Okay. Now I'm going to smooth the edges using a sculpt brush, and it's the Robust Smooth brush. I'll turn the strength down just a little bit, a little less than half. Maybe turn the size up just a little bit relative to that. Go ahead and blow it up, and that size is a little big. And now if I just left click and rub around this edge, it'll kind of get rid of that rough edge a little bit and smooth those pixels out. Smooth those triangles just a little bit. Just to give me a little smoother transition between where I did that fill and the actual tooth. Okay, just working my way around. Till I get all the way around back to where I started from. Okay, that looks pretty good. I can now go up here to File. I can export this out to some sort of a spot on my hard drive. I can name it Essex Pontics, and that file will be saved as an STL file. Before I get, it's always a good idea to run Inspector on this again, and Analysis, Inspector, and you see it didn't find any defects in the mesh. So I know I exported a good file. If it did, I would just go back and export it again after I repaired any defects that it found on the second time through. But since it didn't, I'm good. Now I want to go to my model. So these are my two ponics, and you'll notice the model has the exact same divots in it and extrusions as the ponics have, because they were created, the ponics were created from a duplicate of this model. So I'm going to basically make this a printable model by extending a base, making it a hollow model, and then cutting it so that when I print it, I don't have to use as much resin, and I get a model that is solid for printing. This won't print just like it is right now. This is just a shell. It has no actual thickness to it, the way it sits. So the way we do that is we take our selection tool, and we make our brush size as small as we can, and we blow this up really good and big, and we click right on the edge. We're trying to select one row of triangles. Now it's best to work with about 3 rows, so I go to Modify, Expand the Ring, and I do that about twice. Okay, now I'm going to optimize the border, and again smooth the border, so that we have, and if I hit accept, I now have a smooth border that I'm working with. Now I'm going to leave that selected, and I'm going to use a tool called the transform tool. By hitting the letter T on the keyboard, it gives me the transform tool, and now I can move that selection apically, if you will, so that I can begin to create a base for this model. I have to create some thickness so that I can get a smooth plane cut, and if I cut this thing completely through, it'll put a base on the model. But I have to get it thick enough that I can cut through this side and not be cutting through an open side on the other side of the model. So this will probably work out okay. So if I extrude it to that point, or I transform it to that point, and I look at it and I say, okay, that's a good looking base. It's going in the right direction. I mean, if the base were going, off like this, you would want to straighten it up a little bit. But this one is going in a pretty good direction. I'm pretty happy with that all the way around. I can accept it, and once it's accepted, I can go ahead and clear the selection, and I'm ready to plane cut. Now I'm going to go to the Edit tool and plane cut, and I want to cut this model. I'm going to draw a line about right here, and we'll sort of see what that gives me. Okay, you can see it does give me a closed model. Okay, so that's pretty good. Look at it all the way around. Well, you can see it's sort of, I'd probably like it to be a little less thick in the anterior. So I'm going to draw that line again. I'm going to start, I like the thickness back here, so I'm going to start right on that plane. And I'm just going to take my plane down a little bit in the front. Okay. And you might see that it's selecting the wrong half. By hitting this arrow, I'll make it select the portion of the model that I really do want to keep. I can see I still have a closed model. Okay, as I look around, that looks pretty good from all angles. I'm going to hit accept. So now we have our Essex model. It's got a closed base. Now I want to make it hollow so that it won't use as much resin up. And simply just use the hollow button. I click on hollow, and you'll see it will create a hollow shell. There are some default parameters, offset of 2 millimeters. I always accept all of these. It's perfectly fine. Now, if you'll see about where that hollow starts, we're going to plane cut it right about through this area, and it'll give us a hollow model that we want. So I'm going to hit accept on this, and I'm still on the edit, so I'm on the edit option, so I'm going to go ahead and go to plane cut. And when I plane cut it right across here, it'll give me, you see, the hollow model that I'm wanting. Now, you might even look at that and say, well, I don't really need to print that much. I can save more resin by cutting it down just a little bit lower, more resin, and it'll print faster. So if I look at this model, well, that's maybe a little too low in the back. So if I tip this down some, up some, and I cut this again, and just keep adjusting it till you get it exactly the way you want it. That's not giving me what I want yet. Let's try that. Okay, that looks pretty good. And that's probably plenty of model to give me a nice Essex that I can work with. So if I hit accept, this becomes my Essex model. Okay. So now I can, let's just run inspector on it. Always a good idea to run inspector to see if there's any defects in the mesh, and it did not find any. If it doesn't find any, there won't be any of those little blurbs. So now I can export this model, file, export. I'm going to call it, instead of Essex Ponics, I'm going to call it Essex Model. You can call it Base Model. Okay. So now I've got an Essex model, and I've got Essex Ponics that the Ponics have the same extrusions that the model has. So when I print the model and I print the Ponics, I can make a vacuum form on the model, and the Ponics will literally snap right in. And what I do with this this model is I just save this model. I have my assistant make 2 Essex vacuum forms for the patient. I give them the first one with the Ponics plugged in, and I show them how to take the Ponics out and put them in the second one. When they wear through the first Essix Retainer, they switch out the Ponics, and then I ask them to call the office, and my assistant will make them 2 more. At their convenience, they can stop by, pick up the two new Essix retainers, and when they wear the second one out, they can pop the Ponix into the third one. When they wear the third one out, they call the office again, and they get two more. This way, it's very convenient. The patient never has to be without a provisional restoration. As we know, they tend to wear through these things frequently. This way, it's really not an inconvenience for anyone. When they call the office, they can give us a day or two. The assistant can have these things made, and then the patient can stop by sort of at their convenience and pick them up. So this has turned out to be just a real time saver, convenience factor for both myself and the patients. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something, and if I can help you with anything else, give me a call, let me know, send me an email. I'd love to get together, love to teach some of this stuff in my office, where we can look at surgical guides, we can look at ExaCAD, we can look at lots of different facets of digital dentistry, the new patient exam, and treatment planning and case presentation, using PowerPoint, using Excel, using different tools, digital tools, to not only make your life around the office easier, but to make it far more productive. Take care, have a great day, and hope to hear from you soon. Hey, thank you for watching. I hope this has been beneficial. If you have questions or comments, you can email me at drp@drpatedmd.com. I love to teach courses at my office from time to time. These are boutique type courses limited to 10 to 12 participants at most. My passions are guided surgery, data collection and case presentation for the new patient exam. We utilize Excel to organize and streamline the data collection, and then PowerPoint to illustrate the treatment, customizing the presentation using the patient photos obtained during data collection. I also love to discuss digital diagnosis using ExaCAD. Wow, that's a big topic, but so much fun. If you're interested in any of these topics, I'd love to hear from you, and we can try to set up some time to get you up to speed on your topic of interest. Now, these courses are software intense. I find the biggest roadblock most dentists have to digital dentistry and guided surgery is learning to use the software. So we dive deeply into the software so that you learn the fine points of the digital world. We can initially outsource the 3D printing, and once you know the software, in-office 3D printing is easy to add. We can plan one-day classes, but the most benefit is obtained from at least a 2-day format with any of these topics to become proficient. Have a great day in spite of all this COVID shutdown, and I hope to hear from you soon.